Welcome to another segment of ZARR'S Spotlight of the Month. I'm your co-host, W. Keith Scott, and today's guest is Katherine Gotthardt. Now, she's president of the Right by the Rails Writers Club here in Northern Virginia. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Katherine Gotthardt.
Hi, it's really good to be here. Thank you for having me. I've been really excited about this.
Great. So tell us a little more about you.
So I am in Northern Virginia. I'm originally from Massachusetts. I am a poet. I am an author. I write prose. I write articles, books, and I'm also president of Right by the Rails, which is the Prince William chapter of the Northern Virginia, of the Virginia Writers Club. So they have several different chapters throughout the entire state, and we are located in the Manassas, Prince William area.
Okay. Now, you said something that just stuck out to me. I mean, besides the writing, you said you're from Massachusetts. Now, what part of Massachusetts are you from?
North of Boston, and when I get really excited, you're going to hear me drop my R's.
Now, come on now. Now, I'm from Dorchester, so come on
no,
now.
No, sir. Get out of
yes,
here.
I am now.
Get
come
out of
on
here.
Now. I grew up in Dorchester. Yeah,
oh, that's
right
too
there.
funny.
And Dorchester and Roxbury, so right there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you said north. What part of exactly? Because you're acting like I won't know.
All right, so I grew up in Billerica,
okay.
Massachusetts.
I know exactly where you're talking about. Right. So how did you get into writing?
So I started writing when I was a kid. As soon as my mom taught me how to read, I just immediately wanted to write. And I started doing that. And of course, you know, Dr. Seuss and going to church and listening to spiritual music and everything rhymes. So I started out just by writing rhymes. Mm-hmm. And then I also started to write short poems. And then I immediately started to write prose, and I put together my own little magazine. It was called Puppet Gossip.
Puppet Gossip.
Puppet Gossip. Yes, this was the deep, dark lives of my puppets. It was a magazine that I still have. It's very embarrassing. But, you know, good times. So that's how I got started, and I just carried it through my entire schooling. I think I was just kind of supposed to be a writer.
Okay. Now, what age were you when you did this Puppet Gossip?
Puppet Gossip, I was in elementary school. But when I first started writing poetry, I was probably 5-ish.
5-ish?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you did the Puppet Gossip.
I did Puppet Gossip.
So now I'm kind of doing this timeline. So
right.
You did the Puppet Gossip, started 5, Puppet Gossip, now you junior high, now middle school. What are you doing now?
So I went through junior high. I was in several creative writing programs. When I was in high school, I flunked out of anatomy and physiology. I accidentally stabbed a fetal pig in the stomach. Yeah, I was like, no, this is so not where I'm supposed to be, and I kept flunking. So creative writing, I could write about this, but I definitely couldn't do this in the lab. So, and then I didn't want to go to college right away. And I took a couple years off. I worked in a whole bunch of different jobs and industries, and I finally went back as an English major. Went to UMass Lowell, in Lowell, Massachusetts.
Okay. Lowell, Massachusetts. Yeah. I know about that as well.
Great place, awesome, one of the best experiences of my life. And I started publishing in college. Yeah.
All right. And this added to your creativity through, you know, the deal with the pig and everything, that this added to your creativity?
I think so. You know what? Nothing is wasted with writing. You know, I mean, you have so many experiences and perceptions. I think a lot of it is a matter of recalling it and capturing it on paper in some kind of a literary form, whatever that literary form is.
Now, you said something that stuck out to me. With myself, working on my creative experiences and writing, recall, how does that work for you?
You know, we, for Right by the Rails, we had a session on voice, and we talked about your writer's voice. And your voice is just kind of part of who you are. And when you sit down to create, when you're in that zone and you're in your own voice, it is easier to recapture those moments that were significant and to be able to put them down on paper, either as they occurred, you know, if you're going to write a memoir or something like that, or to translate them into something, you know, poetic, or even intertwine those experiences, you know, into fiction or an article or some other genre. So a lot of it has to be, it's getting in touch with your own voice and your own experiences, and putting them out there, which can be scary sometimes.
Yeah, I can understand that, especially because your mind goes all over the place.
Oh yeah.
I know I find myself like, wow, this is really out in the left field. Now, you said another key word for me when you say poetic. Now, a lot of times when people think about being poetic, they think that things have to rhyme or have to be connected in some form or fashion. With your work, is everything, would you say, rhyme or some kind of poetic in a sense? Or what is poetic in your sense?
Yeah, I don't do a tremendous amount of rhyme. I know people that do. A lot of my rhyme is kind of sporadic, and I really like to focus on kind of like the cadence of it. So I will read all of my poems out loud before I put them out there, because I want to make sure that there is a certain rhythm to it. But it's not always the da 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 da. You know, it's not the Dr. Seuss that I used to do when I was younger. But for me, something that's poetic is, it really captures imagery, which is based on your senses. So, you know, we're sensory creatures. So if you can bring your readers into your senses, then you are capable of bringing them into your writing world. So, you know, you want to describe things in terms of, you know, hearing and smelling and seeing, you know, tasting and touching, so that you are actually drawing them in. And when people can experience the world the way that you're experiencing it, then you know that you succeeded as a writer.
How do you do that?
A lot of editing. A lot of editing, and it's a lot of practice. You know, you do it until it starts to become second nature. And I think what some folks forget is that writing is a communication, and art is a communication. And so you have to figure out how to communicate with your audience. And I think, you know, sometimes people are like, oh, I hate poetry because I don't understand it. I think they haven't found the kind of poetry that they connect with. I think some poetry is less accessible than other types of poetry. Same thing with any genre. So, you know, you have to find what it is that you connect with. But ultimately, I'm trying to connect with my readers because I feel like I've got something to say.
Okay. So maybe every form of art is not connecting to everyone, it's not for everyone, is what you're pretty much saying, right?
I think so. I think there's something for everyone, but not everything is for everyone.
Okay, that's understandable. So maybe that artist, maybe not the artist that person connects with.
Sure.
Right.
Sure, just like visual art, you know, you go to a museum and you're kind of like, what am I looking at? I'm not really, you know, this isn't doing anything for me. You go to a different section and you're, wow, this is really, you know, I connect with this.
Okay. Now, with you're the president. Tell me more about the club that you're the president of.
So I'm actually a founding member also. The club was started in 2011. Cindy Brookshire, who was a Manassas-based writer and just a community activist, said that she wanted to have kind of a clearinghouse for writers and to raise the profile of the literary community, is the way that she put it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very cool. So we started out, we sat in a little restaurant in Manassas, Old Town, called Okra's, and we had our first meeting, and it just really caught on. We've been going ever since. Became part of the Virginia Writers Club. So we're part of a statewide entity, which is great. They have a lot of resources that we can connect with and utilize. And we've got about 42 official members right now. But then we have people that come, our events are open to the public also, so you can kind of jump in, you know, check us out, see what we're learning. We have enrichment events every month. We had them live, now we've been online.
So you're Zooming as well?
Yeah, we're Zooming.
Okay.
We've been Zooming every month through COVID. Yeah.
You have a Facebook?
Yep. Right by the rails. So it's WRITE. By the rails, like the railroad, because there's a railroad in Manassas. That's where it comes from.
Now, how would young people get connected with that?
So the club itself is 18 and over. However, we do have a lot of teachers, and we have a lot of connections with the statewide club. So they have things like scholarships, they have youth contests and things like that. So there's a couple ways you can go through us. Our website is wbtr.org, but there's also the VirginiaWritersClub.org, and you can check them out too. So those are for the 18 and younger. 18 and over, come check us out, get on our mailing list. We send you the Zoom link, you show up, and we have these events and guest speakers every month.
Right. So you said your club is for 18 and above, but you said something about 18 and below?
Yes, 18 and below. The Virginia Writers Club does have resources and events for under 18. Yep.
Okay. Now, is there something to involve you said 18 and below, but is there something to nourish the young people? Because you said you got started young.
Yes.
So is there something to kind of bring up and kind of tutor the younger folks to get them started like you got started?
That's a really good question. So most of us actually have some kind of community involvement. And many of us are giving back to the community by doing things like going into the schools and doing readings. I personally, one of the things I do is I have children's books too. I have 2 children's books. So,
wow, yeah, that's awesome.
One of them is called A Crane Named Steve, and the crane was actually a crane that was by 66 down in Manassas. And a local illustrator and I put together this book. And a coloring book. And so what we've been doing is donating it to the libraries and donating it to communities. And when school's back in session, we're going to be going out and doing readings and answering questions for the kids and things like that about how you can get started writing. But most of us do workshops and things like that for kids outside of the club.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
A lot of community involvement.
How does faith play a part in this? Because when you were talking, I got a feeling that there was some type of faith into this. Does that play a part anywhere?
Individually, as artists, yeah. I mean, we've got quite a few spiritual writers, and they are faith-based writers that have been published by faith-based publishing houses. When I was growing up, we grew up in a very spiritual household, Catholic background, and as I got older, I became interested in world religions. So a lot of my work is reflected with my interest in world religions and the spirituality that connects us all, and kind of brings us as one. And I think that's one thing that I really love about writing is, the diversity and those deeper connections that you can get through the written word. In these various ways, but it brings us all together as humans.
Awesome. I think that's so beautiful, just by words and people coming together and connecting through words, because people can relate to the same experiences and just through reading.
For sure. Yes.
Right. So, being from Massachusetts, I was born in North Carolina but raised in Massachusetts, so we're still somewhat homies. What do you think that being from Massachusetts and then living in Virginia, what do you think that experience has with your writing ability and knowing people from Virginia and knowing people from Massachusetts? How do you think that equates to your writing ability as an adult?
Yeah, let me tell you. I probably don't have to tell you. It was a big culture shock when I came here. When I was living up north, first of all, everything is the Revolutionary War. Like, you go to Concord and there's all the reenactments and the Paul Revere Trail. And then I come here and I'm like in Manassas and it's like Civil War land. And I was just like blown away. I mean, it's just not it's something that I was accustomed to, and I found myself, like, as a writer, I was like, what is going on here culturally? I don't get this. So I started hiking in the battlefields, and I started reading all the little placards, and so my first collection of poetry is poems from the battlefield, and that is what kind of got me, rolling, and it's probably one of my best-selling works because of the, the culture here. But it is very different, and I know, Northern Virginia, and especially with folks coming from, working in the government, we've got a lot of people from very different places, and it's very, it's very transient in some ways.
Yes.
Which I like that about Northern Virginia. You just meet so many cool people and different backgrounds, and who knew that I was going to meet someone from Dorchester?
I know,
awesome.
I know. Yeah, it's like the great American melting pot, with the Washington, D.C. in itself. And I'm right here in Fredericksburg, so you can't go this way or that way without, seeing some kind of monument or something there.
Oh, yeah.
Right there in Fredericksburg. So, with the advice from other members of your chapter, do you think that the diversity among the group, where do you see yourself in 5 years, as far as moving forward, as far as growth? Where do you want to see the chapter in 5 years from now? And I'm calling it a chapter. Do you?
It is a chapter.
Okay. Yes. Yep.
So that's a really good question, because I think COVID has really changed the nature of our club. We were initially chartered just for the Prince William area and Manassas Park. But because of COVID, we've gone online, and so we've had people from kind of all over the country, taking part in our events, which is great to see. So I think we need to kind of revisit that. We're going to certainly continue to have some live events when we do go back to being live, but I think we're going to be doing a lot of virtual events also, so we can be more inclusive, which I really like. There is another chapter of the Virginia Writers Club, Northern Virginia Writers, and so we actually work together with them and collaborate on longer, like full day sessions and workshops and things like that. So we're not the only game in town, but I think we're pretty cool.
So awesome. Now this is probably, leave it up to me, but I'm thinking outside the box here. As a poet, and you probably, how many books have you written, or poems?
I've got 9 books.
9
books. One terrible novel that I would never recommend. I've got 2 children's books. And a mixed kind of self-help poetry book.
Self-help.
And the rest are poetry collections.
Okay. Now, is there, and our poetry is how long? Maybe what, 1 page, paragraph or 2, not too, really. How could anyone ever make something of maybe a story about a person, a story about your life. Hey, a story about your life. Have you ever thought about that?
A story about my life?
Yeah, about you.
I have a very boring life.
What?
Well, okay. So
think about it.
Some of the theories of writers is that we're observers, and because of that, we're in that capacity. A lot of us are not out there on the forefront. We're out there writing about what's going on the forefront. So I feel like I've observed a lot, especially historically what's gone on for the past, year and a half. So I can write that story. But you don't want to write about me. I'm sitting there in my basement, man. I'm just typing.
You know what? The observer being observed. We'll take a break and be right back.
It's time to turn all the way up. It's time to put fear to all these fools.
ask you two something. Since you seem to know his name, but do you really know him?
These people won't believe me. I'm talking to them. I'm trying to reach them, and they will not believe me. My Lord, your God is on his way.
Again, Katherine, let us know how we can connect with you.
Sure. So our website is wbtr.org. That's for Right by the Rails. We are on Facebook at Right by the Rails. That's our group. And actually today we have two poets that are going to come and read their work. So I'm really excited that Kathy Haley and Brian Donnell James will be coming in and each reading a poem so they can share some of their work.
Sounds good. We look forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Donnell James, and I am a United Nations award-winning poet. I would like to share with you my piece called The Lesson. Arm in arm, together they sang, some in tones slightly off key, yet striking a perfect pitch within. They sang before him, their fallen mahogany prince, as he lay in state, caressed by sweet-smelling flowers, and draped across his chest were their hopes. And even in death, he was noble. He was beautiful, struck down in a hail of man-made lightning and thunder, struck down by the envy of another denied soul. Yes, it was all too soon, and thus the lesson would begin. Within a newly found faith or a newly found fear, the songstress wails her haunting redemptions, a plea for deep almond eyes now weeping. Let them convey this pain so deeply rooted. Let them speak of this loss in warning. Yes, Lord is heard. My God is cried, for the sheer thin veil of invincibility has been removed. Death is here. Now see, I hear your tough talk, youngin'. I see your strong strut, youngin'. But I'm a poet. I search souls. I search behind your threatening postures and menacing faces, your mask, worn in deception. I still see you because I am you and you are me. Both children exposed to lost innocence, nursed on streets of broken glass and dwelling in buildings graffiti clad. We hustle, we survive, but we are afraid because we know within this brotherhood, some will live and some will die. Not one rose given in this life. So why do they cry when we die? Arm in arm together we sang, some in tones slightly off key, yet striking a perfect pitch within, because lessons in blood can never be erased.
Hi, I'm Kathy Haley, and I'm the Northern Region Vice President of the Poetry Society of Virginia. And I've been involved with Right by the Rails since the beginning, when a group of us went to the Prince William County Arts Council and proposed that the literary arts be included under the umbrella of the arts. That worked out for us, and you just heard from Katherine, so I'm glad that we have this organization. I chose the poem Wind and River because I wrote it in Fairfax Station at my mom's house that backs up to the woods. I also won a Right by the Rails poetry contest last year, and the 3 poems submitted included this one. It was previously published on the Right by the Rails Facebook page and in Nova Bards 2020, an anthology. Wind and River. Last night's rain amplified sounds of flowing water. In the early April morning, audibly transforming Rattlesnake Creek, winding around behind our house into a rushing river. Still, the sun made a bold appearance, drying pavement, rosebush leaves, tulip petals, warming us as we drank tea and coffee with whistling finches and a sparrow's serenade. When the wind picked up, rising to a howl and then subsiding, it sounded like ocean waves crashing on the shore. We dreamed of squeezing together, nearly touching, sharing sandwiches and sodas on the beach, the way we did on family vacations, joining cousins in Point Pleasant Beach, New Jersey. Back home, a storm was clearly brewing, but raindrops only stippled the landscape before the sun beamed bright. The wind screamed in anger without retreating, yet I refused to withdraw into the stillness of the house. I'd rather join forces with wind and river, feel the spiritual kinship that might restore my faith in the future's promise. Thank you.
Well, that concludes another segment of KZARR's Spotlight of the Month. Stay tuned next time as we spotlight another artist in the DMV. Thank you. All right.